Hey guys, this is the Infernoman, and we do budget, jank, fun, and Magic the Gathering Arena. Now, before we get into it, if you like the content that I put out there, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit me up with a like, or even better, subscribe to me. It really does show people that they care about what I do. If you have any questions, comments, stuff you'd like to see discussed, or if you want to talk to me directly, you can @ me on Twitter or chat directly with me, as I do stream 2 to 3 times a week on Twitch. Sometimes it's Magic, sometimes it's other games. Either way, a visual link for those are going to be up on the screen right now, and I will have direct links in the details below. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get into this deck tech. And for today's deck tech, we're covering a mono white deck that actually has had various names over time. This type of deck has seen different levels of play depending on the format. Some versions call this white weenies, some have called it mono white life gain, some have called it mono white aggro. You more or less have an idea what I'm talking about still. Our deck is actually going to be all the above, so we're going to be calling it Mono White Ascend for the sake of simplicity because we are hoping to trigger this ability off. For those that have forgotten, Ascend is when you get the city's blessing, meaning a total of 10 or more permanents on your side of the battlefield. I'll explain in a little bit why this is important to our deck. Now, if you are still new to how I do this, first I always cover the creatures, then we go over the non-creature spells, the land base if applicable, the sideboard, we'll then spar with Sparky to give you an idea of what you're trying to do with this deck, and at the end, the upgrades you may want to consider if you like this style of deck. And now that we have that established, let's dive in. We're going to be utilizing 34 creatures in this deck total, beginning with Soul Warden. Soul Warden is a 1 mana 1/1 human cleric. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. This is one of our life gain creatures that helps us win faster, and you'll see why in just a little bit. Don't forget that its ability gains us life off of any creature that enters the battlefield. Great first turn play, but expect this to be the target of removal. Leonin Vanguard, 1 mana 1/1 cat soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures, the Vanguard gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you gain 1 life. It's not as fast as the Soul Warden in terms of raw life gain, but if we can maintain a 3-creature board, this will help us get our strategy going faster. Great early attacker with its mini pump ability. Sky Marcher Aspirant, 1 mana 2/1 vampire soldier with Ascend. Sky Marcher Aspirant has flying as long as you can have the city's blessing. It's cheap, does decent damage, and if we can get in the city's blessing, gains flying, one of our Ascend creature payoffs. Speaking of that, we also have Snubhorn Sentry, 1 mana 0/3 dinosaur. Snubhorn Sentry gets +3/+0 as long as you have the city's blessing, our second Ascend payoff. At worst, it's a good early blocker, and at best, it becomes a 3/3 with the city's blessing for 1 mana, which is actually a better deal than, say, the Wendy's 4 for $5 meal. Okay, real talk for a second. I actually really love those meals. They are delicious. And they're actually pretty cheap and good, well within my budget. Sorry, thinking of food again. Anyways, Dauntless Bodyguard, a 1 mana 2/1 human knight creature. As Dauntless Bodyguard enters the battlefield, choose another creature you control. Sacrifice Dauntless Bodyguard. The chosen creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Some have argued that the Selfless Savior is actually a better creature protection spell, but we're looking to be aggro in this deck. So this is why we're picking this over that. I know the 1 damage difference may not seem like much, but every little bit in this kind of a deck helps. Ajani's Primate and Hallowed Priest. Both of them have the exact same ability. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on the creature. The real difference, of course, is the Primate is a 2/2, Hallowed Priest is a 1/1. Also, the other funny thing is, Hallowed Priest is actually not a real magic card, quote unquote. Oh yeah, this card only exists in Arena, but we're going to take advantage of that here. So kind of just think of them as 8 copies of whichever card you want to believe. Skyclave Cleric, 2 mana 1/3 core cleric. When the cleric enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, or you can put it down as a land tapped. It's our only flex creature. We really want to gain life in this deck, and you can also put a body on the field, but if you really have to get a land out in a pinch, you can just put it in as such. It's only 2 copies in the deck, so just choose however you need to use it. Angel of Vitality, 3 mana, Angel 2/2 for flying. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. Angel Vitality gets you +2/+2 on it as long as you have 25 or more life. So, in other words, it's our only 3 drop that starts off small. If we maintain that 25 life, it's a 4/4 Angel with flying for 3, which is also a pretty good deal. I mean, not as quite good as, say, the Sentry and that Wendy's meal deal I just mentioned, but it's our only true evasive creature, at least until we get the City's Blessing. But it also synergizes with our life gain and aggro plan. And with that, we have all of our creatures taken care of. Now let's go over the spells. As for our non-creature spell package, very small, only 8 cards. First off, Cartouche of Solidarity. enchant creature you control. When Cartouche's Solidarity enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. An enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has first strike. Wow. Okay. I know already. I already made lame jokes about meal deals, but come on. Look at everything this card does for 1 mana, and it's a common. That's a really, really good deal. Okay, stop. I'll stop. I won't make food puns. Let me just say this. It just helps us with the game plan, so use it. That's awesome. Pride of Conquerors, 2 mana instant speed with Ascend. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. If you have the City's Blessing, those creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn. It's our last payoff for getting the City's Blessing. Pumping everything for 2 mana can help us force through the last remaining bits of damage to close out the game. Make a Stand, 3 mana instant speed. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. This is a much more expensive and very weak pump compared to the Pride of Conquerors, but it's our only way to protect against a Wrath. Ideally, we should be beating our opponent before they have the Wrath, but just in case they do, this can help us save our creatures for a turn. That's basically it for the spells. I mean, nothing fancy, just a small touch of support. Our mana curve is very low, so we're only running 18 lands total. Our only unique land is Radiant Fountain. Radiant Fountain, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and you tap it for a colorless mana. A few of our creatures benefit from the life gain, so that's why we're running it. Otherwise, I guess you could say the deck is as plain as can be. Sorry. Seriously though, 14 planes. That's all you need. Okay, let's just talk sideboard. As far as the sideboard is concerned, we have a couple ways of handling things that would otherwise ruin our game plan. Apostle of Purifying Light, 2 mana, 2/1 human cleric, protection from black. For 2 mana, exile a target card from a graveyard. Puts a body on the field and can deal with the graveyard stuff. Protection from black actually does come in handy with some of our matchups that we have. We also have 2 more copies of Make a Stand if we need to swap out anything to get more protection. And I'm going to actually talk about the remaining cards all in one go. Invoke the Divine, 3 mana, destroy target artifact or enchantment. You gain 4 life. Baffling End, a 2 mana enchantment. When Baffling End enters the battlefield, exile target creature and opponent controls with a converted mana cost of 3 or less. When Baffling End leaves the battlefield, target opponent creates a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with trample. And Conclave Tribunal, 4 mana enchantment with Convoke. When Conclave Tribunal enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until the tribunal leaves the battlefield. The reason why I'm going to talk about the other cards altogether is the way this deck works, you want to focus primarily on being aggro and hitting your opponent as hard and as fast as possible. So don't over sideboard based on what we have. With these cards, you really only want to bring these in if you have something that's worse to deal with than actually just fighting through it. Things like Uro probably would be a reason you would bring in a Baffling End. Things like maybe a certain Planeswalker for a Conclave Tribunal. But in those instances, the only reason I'm going to emphasize this is the longer you try to stall out your opponent with enchantments, it is more likely you're going to lose because this deck is not meant for the long game. Otherwise, let's go over now a match with Sparky and show you how the deck is done. Okay, here we go. Mono White Ascend. No rares, no mythics versus Sparky. I know, it's going to be super intense right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and explain again what you should be looking at for your game plan. You want to have at least maybe one of your life gain abilities, creatures, whatever in your hand, and hopefully something to pay off with it. So as you can see right here, Johnny's Primate, awesome. Soul Warden, great. And we do get a little bit of life gain from one of our lands. Angel of Vitality is also here too, and our Ascend. Okay, let's keep this. Let's go ahead. Let's do this. Planes down. Get the Soul Warden in. She's going to give us all the life. Mountain. So, what is our oh so fun play partner going to do? Is she going to start burning out our cards? Let's see. Gain some life. Pump up the Pride Maid. Hopefully when you get it high enough, you won't have to worry about things such as removal. At least when you fight red. Other colors, I can't promise much here. Alright, so let's see. Radiant Life. More life gain. Pumps up the Pride Maid. Awesome. Angel of Vitality. Also more life gain. And it also triggers off more because that's getting you 2. And the Angel's already now a 4/4. Pride Maid's already a 5/5. Soul Warden. Well, I mean, Soul Warden didn't get anything, but we're smashing in real fast here. That's the whole point of the deck. Get in creatures, gain some life, pump them all up from that, and just smash in as fast as possible. Skyclave actually is really good here. We can use it as a land, but we actually don't need to. Okay, so also, if you don't go big with your creatures, you can still go wide and then trigger off your Ascend. In this case, we have right now, how many permanents? It's 7 permanents right now. This would count as 8. Let's put it actually on here. That creates another token, so you're now looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Skyclave coming in. Gain some life. More triggers, all that jazz. Whew. They're probably going to block here, of course. Down to 7. This was what you basically wanted out of the deck. Wow, this is actually pretty quick. Raid Bombardment, that's fine. I mean, I'm sorry, Sparky, we're going to smash in right now, but this is ideally what you literally want to do with the deck. Go big, go wide as fast as possible, and it doesn't really matter what we're protecting. Gain some life. I'll hold full control right here because I just want to show you, of course, when you do your final swing in, now that you have all the permanents, this will trigger off Ascend here. So when you do your swing, Pride of Conquerors, pay it. Massive buff when you get the City's Blessing. Remember, again, City's Blessing is when you have 10 or more permanents, and we have more than enough. So let's go ahead, let's trigger that off. Boom, just saw a trigger. Look at that massive board. Again, it's a really simple, easy to use, easy to play deck, but it gets surprisingly massive quick if you do not keep it in check. And Sparky really didn't get a chance to do anything, but there you go. That's the deck. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's go ahead, let's talk about upgrades now to this. As far as upgrades, there's a lot of options to consider, but to keep things brief, I'm going to have 2 ways to recommend. The first option is if you want to stay on the low mana curve, consider Lurrus as a companion in the sideboard, and a couple copies of Castle Ardenvale as well, both of which help fix one big problem with the base deck, and that is creature removal. This may seem like it limits what your deck can put in, but here's some awesome cards that can help fit the restrictions. Speaker of the Heavens is a 1/1 human cleric with vigilance and lifelink. You get to create 4/4 angels if you have at least 7 life more than your starting life total, and anytime you can cast a sorcery. Sarah Attendant is a human monk 1/1 lifelink. As long as you have 30 or more life, Sarah Attendant gets 5/5 and has flying. Legion's Landing. It's a legendary enchantment. When the landing enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you flip the Legion's Landing into a land. All 3 of these are great synergies that help with the basic game plan. Giant Killer here has 2 options for you. Its instant speed option and adventure is to destroy target creature with 4 or greater for 3 mana. Or for a 1 mana, you get a 1/2 human peasant with an ability that says 2 mana and tap to tap target creature. This basically is meant to be utilized to help you destroy or at least deal with bigger creatures that you otherwise can't handle. Authority of the Consuls shuts down decks that are trying to out-aggro us with its ability. Creatures your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. That really does shut down goblin decks. I should know from personal experience because this card has hosed me many times. Luminarch Aspirant. 2 mana 1/1 human cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1/1/1 counter on target creature you control. Slowly helps up build up our weaker creatures into bigger threats. Remorseful Cleric. 2 mana 2/1 Spirit Cleric with flying. Sacrifice the cleric. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. Helps us destroy our opponent's graveyard shenanigans and also can be brought back with Lurrus. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Legendary human soldier 2/1 first strike. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Thalia punishes non-creature decks with her ability, which doesn't seem that bad, but setting your opponent back on mana costs helps us beat our opponent faster. And that's basically going to be my considerations if you want to stick to a low mana curve. Let's talk about a couple cards that are actually going to help us out if you want to go bigger. Now, if you want to play more white life gain on the bigger side of things, here's a couple other options for you. Heliod Suncrown, 3 mana, 5/5, legendary enchantment creature, god. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, it's not a creature. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. For 2 mana, another creature gains lifelink until end of turn. This, along with Linden the Steadfast Queen for 3 mana, 3/3 human noble with vigilance. Whenever a white creature you control attacks, you gain 1 life. These synergize off each other to start building up a bunch of +1/+1 counters on your weaker creatures and makes them massive and very hard to beat. Unbreakable Formation, 3 mana instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. An addendum. If you cast the spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. A combat trick that can help you out, and it's a lot better than the Make a Stand. I would definitely say, if nothing else, then put these in if you want to use still Make a Stand. Luminous Broodmoth. 4 mana, 3/4 insect, flying. When a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. Basically, if everything gets blown up, the Luminous Broodmoth can bring them back, and it's very annoying to deal with. Use this again if you want to go with an all-creature, all-aggro plan. Ajani, Strength of the Pride. A 4 mana legendary planeswalker. With +1 ability, you gain life equal to the number of creatures you control, plus the number of planeswalkers you control. -2. Create a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token named Ajani's Pridemate with, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. It's 0 ability. If you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, exile Ajani, Strength of the Pride, and each artifact and creature your opponent controls. So in other words, Ajani here is just going to help build up the board, gain us a ton of life, and if you need to blow up the opponent's side of things, you can do that. Pretty solid. It's going to be really nice to just churn out a bunch of extra little Pridemates, which can grow big very quickly. I didn't mention this until now, but I'm going to jump back to it real quick. If you are going to go with the big creature strategy package with life gain, Elset of Life's Bounty and Selfless Savior are going to be the small creatures you want to put in instead to help protect what the bigger creatures are trying to do. Otherwise, that's all I have for you in terms of the big package. You basically can choose whichever one you want. Just keep in mind, as you kind of notice, both sides have a lot of cards to choose from, but they're going to be very expensive in terms of your wild cards. So pick whichever one. Either way you choose, you can't really go wrong. There's a lot of options that actually are very interchangeable. Feel free to experiment and see which one works best for you. And that is mono white overall. So what do you think? Do you like playing cheap threats that can rush in before your opponent can stop them? Do you like life gain strategies? Were you looking to start somewhere with a deck that can be built up to a powerful archetype that uses a lot of synergies? If so, please consider this deck. If you think I missed something, however, if you want to see more budget decks from me, or if you just feel like saying something overall, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from all of you guys. And yes, for the record, yes, I am going to go get that Wendy's meal. Oh, I'm so hungry right now. So thanks again for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe if I helped you out or at least entertained you. And until next time, when in doubt, jank 'em out. Later.